July 15th, 2018. Luzhniki Stadium, Moscow. The game is tight, everyone's nervous, except one guy. Paul Pogba takes a touch outside the box. The ball just sits up for him, and he smashes it into the bottom corner like it was a Sunday League free kick. France go on to become world champions. That's not a lucky player. That's not a YouTube compilation player. That's one of the most talented footballers of his generation. So here's the question this video actually wants to answer. Is Paul Pogba overrated, or is he something rarer and sadder, a generational talent who was never actually the problem with his feet? Because by the end of this, I think you'll agree it's not really a talent debate at all. Let's start with the case for the defence, because you cannot understand how frustrating Pogba's career is until you accept how good he actually was. Physically, Pogba is a football cheat code, 6'3", but he moves like a midfielder half his size. That first step, that ability to shield the ball with his whole frame while still threading a 40-yard diagonal without even looking up. Most players his size are built to defend space. Pogba was built to break lines. Then there's the range box-to-box midfielders usually pick a lane. You're either the destroyer or the creator. Pogba at his best was both late runs into the box, like a striker long-range passing, like a deep-lying playmaker, and a shot that, when it connected, looked like it had been fired out of something illegal. This wasn't potential on paper, this showed up on the biggest stages. A teenage Pogba tore through Serie A with Juventus and won 4 straight league titles. He was man of the match in a World Cup final, he scored in a Europa League final. Whatever you think happened to his career later, none of it erases the fact that when the lights were brightest, he kept turning up. Which is exactly why what happens next is so hard to explain with talent alone. By 2016, the entire footballing world had made up its mind about where this was going. Manchester United brought him back from Juventus for what was then a world record transfer fee, roughly £89 million, for a player they'd let leave for free 4 years earlier. Let that sink in. They paid a record fee to undo their own mistake. Pundits were comparing him to Patrick Vieira with more flair, or a young Zinedine Zidane in a defensive midfielder's body. Managers built entire systems around the idea that he'd be their generational number 8, the player everything runs through for the next decade. It wasn't just talk, he had the World Cup medal, he had the individual quality, he had the marketing deals, the Adidas campaigns, the dab celebration that somehow every kid in Europe was doing at school for about 8 months straight. Genuinely one of the great forgotten crimes of the 2010s. On paper, this is the resume of a top 5 midfielder of his generation. So the question stops being, is he good enough? Everyone already agreed he was? The real question becomes what actually got in the way. Here's the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Pogba's career isn't a story of decline. It's a story of interruption over and over again. At Manchester United, he played under 4 different managers in 6 years, and with almost every single one, the story was identical, brilliant for a stretch of games, then anonymous, then injured, then a headline about his agent or his entourage, then brilliant again just long enough to make you think it had finally clicked. It never fully did, and a lot of that noise wasn't football at all. His agent, Mino Raiola, was constantly and publicly shopping him around while he was still under contract, which is not exactly the recipe for a dressing room that trusts you. Off the pitch, things got darker. His own brother was later convicted of extorting him, involving claims of witchcraft rituals against Kylian Mbappe, of all things. You cannot make this career up. At some point you have to ask if the drama was a side effect of the career or the actual cause of it. Then came the second Juventus spell in 2022, the homecoming that was supposed to reset everything. Instead, a knee injury before he'd even played a game, a handful of appearances, and then in September 2023, a positive doping test, a 4-year ban, later cut to 18 months on appeal. But the damage to his prime years was already done. By the time he was free to play again in 2025, he wasn't chasing a Ballon d'Or conversation anymore. He was signing with Monaco just to prove he could still finish 90 minutes without his body or his circumstances betraying him. And even that comeback has been a struggle. A handful of cameo appearances, a calf injury, a thigh injury in pre-season. And in August 2026, Monaco and Pogba mutually terminated his contract before the season had even started. That's the tragedy in one sentence. A generational talent whose biggest opponent for a decade was never the player marking him. So, is Paul Pogba overrated? No, overrated implies the talent was never really there, that we all got fooled by a highlight reel. That's not what happened. The ability was real, the World Cup medal is real, the 4 Serie A titles are real. If you've watched this whole video and still think he couldn't play, that's not an opinion, that's a bad take. What Pogba actually is a case study in what talent alone cannot do. He had literally everything you'd draw up on a whiteboard for the perfect modern midfielder. Size, technique, range, big game temperament. The only thing missing was the boring stuff. Consistency, discipline around who he let influence him, and the professional habits that turn ability into a full career instead of a highlight reel with really long gaps in it. And that's what makes this harder to watch than a simple flop. A flop never had it. Pogba had all of it, and mentality is the reason we're doing a video about what could have been instead of a documentary about a Ballon d'Or winner. If you enjoyed this breakdown, that's exactly the kind of story this channel exists to tell, not just what a player did, but why. So hit subscribe, tap that bell so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. Do you think Pogba still has one big season left in him, or is this story already finished? I read every single one, and if you made it this far without skipping to the comments to argue with me, respect. See you in the next one.